Where do you want to send us?
Well, let's start where the round finished and the emotions of the coaches in the coaches box last night between Fremantle and Sydney. And I thought Adam Simpson was excellent in his analysis. He jumped into the helicopter or the drone and he went straight up and he goes, this is the circumstances that these two teams are performing in. And this is a must-win game. And it looks like they're playing tight. It looks like they're playing careful. Late in the second quarter, I think it was. And you can't that's a reality. That's part of the situation they found themselves in. Fremantle had a shock loss or a really poor performance against Geelong the week before. Home game, needed a win to get their season started. Sydney had performed okay, but it had 2 losses, threatening to go 0-3. So the worst possible scenarios were evident, and it was on the faces of the coaches, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. And living it through Dean Cox, who hasn't had a win yet as the senior coach, and then right on the siren, one celebrating with phone, the other slapping down the sheets of paper.
Well, yeah, and then the fact that, how tight a line it is. I mean, it looked like that Amos mark might have been touched. So it didn't get there anyway. The siren went, 5 metres before it either hit the pack or his hands. But, that's how marginal it is. You go in and, I'm sure there was both sides missed, crucial shots at goal at different times. I couldn't believe how big the ground was, how much space there looked like there was through the midfield in the last 15 minutes. Like all you needed to do, and we do say this about early round games, but just all you needed to do was to put 2 or 3 really clean disposals together and you were going to be out with a chance to finish. So it was compelling viewing. And once again, another low score, like the Carlton Hawthorn game, like the Collingwood Western Bulldogs game, a low-scoring, enthralling game of football from start to finish. It wasn't something that needed high scoring to be interesting and to be entertaining. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. That first win, especially when you had to wait for a little bit, and they've been really competitive for 8 quarters, against a couple of really good opposition. So you see that and you see the emotions spill out, and it's not just for Dean Cox. He's like the pride that you feel for your people. As he said, I'm wrapped for the players. He's wrapped for his coaches. He's wrapped for all the work that's been put in through the pre-season. Winning's good. Winning's great. It's got to be enjoyed. And as we can see in the first couple of rounds, it's not to be taken for granted because there's some pretty good performers out there, and it's hard to maintain a level that gives you the best chance to win every week. You have to be a pretty good side to do that. But I thought Sydney's performances have been consistent. Good on Dean Cox, good on the Swans and the players. They really dug deep. The flip side result for them would have been harrowing going into their bye. But now they hit it with a bit of upside. And Chad Warner said after, we feel like we've been playing some pretty good footy. If we hadn't have got the win, it was going to come eventually. But it's always better to, as we've said, get the 4 points and the lesson, not just the lesson.
Yep. So the Fremantle side of things, at the start of the last quarter, they had opportunities that Banfield dropped a mark, Amos skied a snap.
Yeah.
Voss ends up hitting the post, and then he's the player who, the crucial ball to centre half forward, which he half miscues. It turns over, down they go. There's a litany of lament in that for Fremantle, I think.
There is, the what ifs are massive for them, but they're now in the situation that Sydney were, and they need to get a win on the board, and they need to get that quick smart. They have had players out. Jeez, how hard's Bolton to tackle, by the way? Like, how good was he sort of running around and making himself easy to miss? Because they've got a lot of things going in their favour. One of the big concerns is they've been absolutely smashed at clearance both weeks. So they were the leading clearance differential team in 2024. So it was something, every now and then you need to have, if you're going to be a really good team, you've got to have things you hang your hat on that you can nearly close your eyes and know that that's going to happen. Of course, you need to put work into it consistently, and you need to make sure that you're focused on those things to keep your strengths strong. But they've been smashed by a side in Geelong who doesn't rate stoppage as much as transition, who puts all their eggs in the transition basket, and by a Sydney side who hadn't been able to win the stoppage battle in the first 2 weeks. So it's a question mark in that area, because when all of a sudden one of your strengths is a weakness, or one of your strengths gets bested and then puts you under fierce pressure, that's definitely where you got to start as a coach. Get back to doing what you believe you're good at and do that extremely well. The rest falls into place.
The buck stops where the round ended, looking for a career that gives you more. Search Police Careers, Victoria Police, made for more. The big issue is the last quarter from North Melbourne and what that might unlock. Just the sheer joy that's coming through from North Melbourne. People who have been the downtrodden for a long time and probably the best they've felt at the footy in 5 or 6 years, and maybe even further back than that.
Yeah, well, this game, this week, and this performance is an outlier performance. We've got to see it as that, given their recent history. It's the first time in 12 games that they've kept a team to under 100 points. It's their highest score since round 22, or it's the second highest score since round 22, 2019. So in over 5 years, this is their second highest score. They performed brilliantly. And it was a 4-quarter performance. It really challenged a talented team on the other side. It brought the other team's weaknesses out. So they were able to defend 19 inside 50s in the third quarter and only give up 2 goals, which was partly their dour desperation and defence, but partly the opposition shooting itself in the foot. But on the flip side, they had 3 goals from 9 entries in the third quarter, and then kicked 6 goals from the first 6 entries in the last quarter. So they were super efficient. They were dangerous. They were damaging. They were lacing up targets. They were clean from the ground level to be able to find that extra handball to put a player into time and space to make a better decision going into forward 50. I think it is a watershed win. It is something that opens up possibility for North Melbourne in the short term, short and medium terms. And it's been a long time coming. That there were great performances across the field.
So the centre square dominance that they got in the last quarter, and it is against a vaunted setup, which we will debate a little later on. So Cherry has the best of Gawn, and then Parker's gone in to lend a hand. We already know how good Simpkin is. You've got Sheasel and Powell doing their thing. And then they're going to a forward line where Larky's been their standard bearer for ages, as Darling's offering him really interesting support. And Zurhaar's getting on the board, and Curtis is getting on the board.
Define interesting.
Yeah, I think complimentary not in your typical kind of way.
Well, he's a big body.
Yeah.
He's a big body that takes a little bit of focus of the opposition, and at his best, he can really hurt you. So, and he's a 300-game player. He's got some experience now. I think North Melbourne's recruiting over the off-season is to be commended. Yeah, and let's break him down. So Caleb Daniel comes back, and he was exceptional, doing what he has always done. So he's always been a high possession getting player, a high effectiveness player. Yeah, he defends as hard as he possibly can, but that's not his one wood. He finds the ball and he distributes. He had 25 kicks, and most of them hit the target. And they don't just hit the target, but they buffer the opposition's chance to put pressure on you. So he's providing that to North. So what that does is it releases McKercher to go and be a midfield forward, which is where he will ultimately be.
Yep.
And Sheasel had already been released by McKercher, so that Sheasel can go and be that player. So now they've got an experienced player in Daniel, who actually releases younger players to sort of go and be the best version of themselves. They bring a big body in Luke Parker in, which means that LDU doesn't have to be the first bloke in and under all the time. He can be a little bit on the fringes every now and then. Powell plays that role, and now you find LDU pops even more. Like we know that he's played games like that before, but it was at an exceptional level. But Parker's presence just helps around the contest, because it's not just Sherry breaking packs. Now it's Parker breaking packs. Powell's having a real crack at it. And then LDU sort of fits in around it. It's pushed Simpkin to half forward. So now he can be a mid forward rather than just a legitimate mid. And he's got speed and damage in the front half. So that's great. And then you put Jack Darling in there. that means Comben can go back rather than having to go and support Larkey in front of the ball, which he had tried to do, which Clarko and North had done a little bit. And Darling's just a big body who provides a contest. And then that means that Zerhard doesn't have to be the second tall. And I think the recruiting was really smart and it was targeted. And on a 4-quarter performance on the weekend, it worked. 4 quarters against Western Bulldogs were pretty good as well, but they just didn't have the finish. The game against Adelaide this weekend's fascinating because they're going to be really hard to stop. Adelaide are up and about, but North would be pretty confident going over there saying, can we impose our game style on a side that's kicked 300 points in 2 weeks? That's going to be interesting to watch.
So what does it do for Alistair Clarkson and what they're teaching and learning and trying to improve? What does that performance give them? So he used the word validated.
Validation is key, and not just for the players. And it doesn't matter how long you've coached for. It doesn't really matter how many premierships you've got hanging up on the wall. Validation is crucial for any high performer at any time. So I think Clarko would feel as validated as any that he's been able to it's like the iceberg. It's just popped through the surface. Like all the work that's been done, evidently, all of the development hours, the blood, sweat and tears, the conditioning, getting kicked when you're down, and then being able to put a performance like this together against a quite recent top 4 list and team. And that's validation. That's validation for everything that we don't see, that the work that North and the group have done internally, that now it's popped through the surface and it's happened in front of our eyes against what we deem as a quality opposition. So it is validating, it is nourishing and reinforcing, and it does give this group of young players, it does give this club an opportunity to go forward from here. So the next challenge is what we do with that. We don't want this to be an outlier. We want this to become the norm. And that's North Melbourne's challenge and opportunity.
I imagine for the first time in men's test history, North Melbourne are the big issue for good. The best bit of the weekend was Sam Darcy, Bucks.
Yeah, he was huge. And if you take in all of the football programs, you will be hearing about him in every one of them because it's compelling. I think one of the reasons, outside of the performance that he gave us on Friday night and the sheer quality and class of what he put forward, and he hit the post twice, which it could have been 5 or 6 goals and an absolute controlling performance in a win for the Bulldogs. But he was exceptional. He goes at highest point higher than anyone can get to. The 2 contested marks he took and then wheeled onto his left, one to lace up a 40-metre pass into the very middle of the field on his non-preferred, and then the one that Dwayne was just calling that he played on with and opted just to go on his left. He wasn't under severe pressure, but he's as comfortable on his non-preferred foot as Darren Jarman was ever on his non-preferred foot, as Leon Cameron was on his non-preferred foot, which is exceptional, saying that he has to drop her an extra foot and a half further than the rest of us. So he, but I think that the sense of how good he is a little bit about his maturity and the fact that he seems unaffected and just faces every contest like it's the most important contest.
It was a happening. It was a happening for observers, for peers, and for opponents alike. The best bit of the weekend was Sam Darcy.
How long you got? It's not pretty, is it? 63 inside 50s against. Now we'll get to Adelaide, and they were very good. So I think they face a team that's upper end is as good as we thought it was a couple of years ago, and now they've got more availability. But Essendon still put 100 points on the board. Merritt still has 36. Caldwell still has 27. Durham still runs around, putting fierce pressure on and wanting to win the ball hard. Martin's got class. McGrath has a real crack. But they drop off pretty quick. And I can't honestly see where, after the 3 years in the system, like with Brad Scott's coaching and teaching, I can't see the semblance of a side, because to defend you need to do two things. You need to do pressure on ball, and you need to be able to close down the options for the ball carrier. So whether it's by hand or foot. So that's how you build pressure, and that's how you turn the ball over. And if someone he spoke about an uncontested mark that Adelaide, we allowed them to take that uncontested mark, and then they were able to bounce off that. Okay, you're not going to be able to stop that uncontested mark all the time. So when a side takes that uncontested mark, you drop into a team defence of some sort, which has to balance aerial, a switch, a run and carry. Like, you've got to defend everything and anything that the opposition can throw at you. And it needs to be consolidated, and it needs to be organised, and everyone needs to play their role in that. That's not happening. It hasn't happened for the longest time at Essendon. So I presume the work has been done through the off-season, but it's not coming to fruition when it matters in a game. Like, I don't think Reid's a young key player who has been thrown to the wolves a little bit, and you only find out by putting these guys into it. But could that happen at VFL level? Is there anyone else that can be used in that role? McKay is a big recruit who's come across, who has looked all at sea at various times. When he gets a run and jump aerially, you can take an intercept mark or you can spoil, but when the ball hits the ground, you're defending with 5 defenders pretty much. So there's quite a few structural issues that Brad Scott has to fix and has to work on, and some of it might be list. They had an opportunity, like we just spoke about North Melbourne, what they've been able to do by adding sort of bigger bodies, experienced players in certain areas that helps the youth. It hasn't happened at Essendon.
Yeah, so the list conversation, I went back to the notes from crunch time after gather round last year when they'd just been poleaxed by Port Adelaide and just worked through it. So 2015, they take Parrish at 5 and Aaron Francis at 6.
Yep.
Parrish has finished once second in the best and fairest, and he's a one-time All-Australian. Aaron Francis is long gone. 2016, Andrew McGrath at 1. He's finished best 4th in a best and fairest. So he's been a very serviceable player.
And that's exactly what he is. And he has a crack.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Your number 1 draft pick, you're hoping for more than that. No high picks in 17, 18, 19 when they traded them away. And then they go back to the draft in 20. And this is where Nick Cox, Archie Perkins, Zach Reid, and none of them are locks yet.
See, Perkins has looked off his tucker for me in the first 2 games, and that's a question mark. So you look at like which players have improved in the 8 quarters that you've seen. What have we? Isaac Kako is the guy that's having a real crack. Caddy's got class. The same, Merritt, Caldwell, Durham, who have been done. Redmond's dropped off a little bit, not quite as on it. It's just like you sort of go across like that, and you think, okay, Ridley, where's Ridley sort of hasn't been able to bring his best to the table.
21, Ben Hobbs, who was at pick 13, 22, Elijah Satis at 5, and both look short of those markers at least. And then the 2 most recent high picks are Nate Caddy and Isaac Kako, who will hopefully pan out. But so talent for talent, Saturday afternoon, 2 teams that have sort of been long-term rebuilding, they are miles apart now. The Bombers and the Crows.
Yeah, but you throw that at me, and I'll throw St Kilda. So look, St Kilda I think are a very similar list profile to what Essendon are. And on the weekend, and this is only a 1-week sample, the performances were polar opposite. Obviously, Ridley has only played the 2.5 quarters before getting knocked out in round 1, but there are massive questions to ask because in the end you're going to try and pick your best 23 to win that week, but you've also got to be showing signs of building towards what you look like in 6 to 8 weeks. There's not that many that are out, so you've got carte blanche to move and shift. Harry Jones, I liked him as a lead up forward. He's been moved to a wing potentially because not quite as combative as you need a key forward to be. Like, if you've got some issues down back, maybe he goes back to the VFL, plays 3 or 4 games as a key defender, and see if you can make a weakness a strength. But then I don't know what that means you do with Zach Reid. Like, you're going to give him a little bit more time as well. But these are the coaching challenges that you need. Sometimes there's no right answers. Sometimes even the best answer is not satisfactory. and that's a tough spot to be in. But Essendon they've plugged away. They've been competitive for a lot of the last couple of years. The edge that we spoke about, the edge hasn't been there the first two weeks. The edge needs to be there against an Adelaide Crows who, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. If you can't put fierce pressure on at the source, you're not going to be able to impose any game style, and that's what we saw on the weekend.
So the last piece of that conversation is on that defensive intent, system, mindset, is the why. So Brad Scott knows what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
He has implemented it at North Melbourne previously. He's clearly teaching that. Why don't we see it? Why are Essendon for a generation incapable of meeting that minimum standard?
This is the pressure index, right? It's not the unanswerable question.
Yes.
Don't give me the unanswerable question.
Yeah.
It is. I would assume, like when Essendon performed against Geelong in a practice match, and Caddy Cack was up and about, that was like optimism and possibility, and like Sardis was good in the middle, and like, yeah, I get it. But then when it goes up a level, how do you go? And like, as much as you got a 2-game player who's buzzing around and giving us, he's a 2-game player. So there are lots of questions that I can't answer here around, what, and this is the external noise for Brad Scott. This is the external noise for Essendon. Essendon have endured external noise for the best part of 10 years, 15 years, and it's been debilitating for them. They are working towards breaking out of that cycle, and I think there is a bit of a tax that's on the club. It's difficult for them. It's hard for them, but it shouldn't be. It's not something that I think it's something that this group feels like they've been able to shed, and with a new coach in Brad, they've been able to shed in some sense. But yeah, that you can't shed poor performances, and you can't shed underperforming, and that's what's happening. What's happened in the first 2 games, and who have they got coming up? The challenges will come, and once again we get to have a look at them. They play Port Adelaide at Marvel on Thursday night, so they don't have long to wait, and they're not listening to us, and they're not worried. They've already reviewed the last game. They're now looking at Port Adelaide thinking, okay, how do we slow this mob down, and how do we take their game away from them the way Collingwood did, and not allow them to do what they want to do as Richmond did. So that's the immediate opportunity for Essendon, and it's only 3 sleeps away.
The Pressure Index. Experience keyhole laser vision surgery at New Vision Clinics. Call 1800 20 20 20. Brad Scott is with us on 360 tonight. The PFI preliminary final integrity is the Crows, and is the scoring power that we saw and the audacious talent. How far might it take them?
So that was Rankin, right? That was his 2 or 3 bounces along the wing. Was he deliberately, do you think, putting his body outside and leaving the ball in for a period there? He was definitely deliberately staying 1.5 meters from Andy McGrath.
Yep.
It was nearly Lance Franklin and Carl Hooker reincarnated, but running the other way. But that was an excellent finish. Oh, look, the Crows are compelling. Availability, unlike anything they've enjoyed in the last 3 or 4 years. Their youth coming to maturing at the same time. I really like Saligo as a midfielder. I really like Michelani behind the ball. Curtin, who was they were trying to work out exactly how he was going to go about it. They're playing him on the wing and forward. They found a way to how they're going to fit Thilthorpe and Fogarty in that forward mix. And the way they've done it is to allow Tex Walker to play as a forward rogue. You play as a high forward because you're skillful enough to do it. We'll buffer against you with defence by having Neil Bullen run up and down the middle and covering your guy when you can't go. They brought in Peatling and Cumming, who are midfield wingmen, strong types that have got real competitiveness and can second, third, fourth efforts and will run hard. And then they've got classy finishers. Rankin, Rochelle started the year really well after being dropped in the last game. So does that mean that Matty Nix made a good call? some of these things play out, in a long form. But Adelaide are up and about. Their match against the Kangaroos this week at Adelaide Oval was another opportunity for them to impose their brand. And also, I didn't even mention Dawson. Like, how good has he been? And the key backs are starting to stand up. Murray's been a player that I reckon has always had the attributes to be a really good key back. I think Butts might be the guy that's injured, the only guy that's not available, and he's and I reckon he whether it's he or Mark Keane, I think they're interchangeable. And look, they're top of the ground now. Their 8 quarters has looked really good, and 300 points in 2 weeks. I don't think we would have seen that. We haven't seen it in recent times, so it's they're in remarkable form so early.
Will they put cricket scores up all year?
Well, they can. I mean, when they made their run late in 23, they were excellent. I think the thing that struck me with Adelaide, I don't know who it was that they played. It might have been Carlton. They kicked 8 goals in the first quarter, and I think it might have even been a gather round, the first game of 2023, a gather round,
8-3 to 2-1. Yeah,
and that was scoring power, but it was based on ball winning and just cleanliness, players in the right spot at the right time. The team synergy was through the roof. That's what Adelaide have been capable of, and that's why we've looked across and been disappointed at their lack of ability to bring that to fruition. When it happens over a long period of time, you sort of forget that, they've missed this guy and that guy, and they've missed structural elements of their game. They haven't had, at times, they've had 10, 12, 15 guys sitting on the injury list. So now we're actually seeing what they're capable of. They've put their stake in the ground, and they've started a year off really well. It's now incumbent on them to maintain the rage, and we find out, what's underneath, in that underbelly. Is there a tough underbelly that isn't going to accept a drop-off? And when the drop-off comes, is it going to be a grind just to stay at a 6 or a 7 out of 10, or do they drop off to a 3 and a 4? They're the decisions that not the decisions, that's the thing that will be shown in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But Adelaide, if you allow Adelaide to get their game going, you're going to be chasing tail all day. So you can't afford. You've got to really attack their strengths and take their 1 wood away, which is their cleanliness from inside to out. You need to win the ball inside, and you need to disrupt the inside to out play that they have.
Where did Carlton's excitement go, Bucks? Where was the excitement gone?
When I saw this come through, I thought, okay, what's Gerard's angle here? So what are you? They're not exciting at the moment,
No.
Are they? And they were exciting out a stoppage forward, and then every now and then when they got their run and carry game going. But we haven't seen a lot of that, have we? We haven't seen their one. Well, we've seen it from TDK. Like he's exciting. My God, anytime there's a clearance and he's in the contest or an aerial ball, he's making it happen, which is gives you pause for thought, because he and Paddy Cripps have both played 2 really good games. Cripps, the last goal that Watson kicked, Cripps could not go with him, couldn't, but he just couldn't. He was gassed. This was 5 minutes before the end of the game. It was the nail in the coffin. But Watson's spread on him 20 metres and Cripps moved 5. And then there was a gap, and then Watson even had time to fumble it to run around him, and he was cooked.
Yep.
So we've got your two best players, De Koning and Cripps, your 2 most consistent high-level performers. Curnow looked hobbled. Mackay's not there. You could argue, Sam Walsh when he's up and about, but he's not at his best at the moment. But there's a lot of talent there. So they're exciting. Those 2 are exciting, and they're exciting when their best players are sort of doing what they do, but it takes more than that to win a game of footy.
Start off half-back only once for the night. It just feels like
when you're on your back foot, when the opposition put you on the back foot, when they control contested ball or they control time in possession, when they force you into your back half, it's hard to be exciting. So I think we always fall to this. Where's the dare? Where's the run? Where's the creativity? all of those things come from doing the basics really well. All of those things come from winning the arm wrestle, which isn't creative, which isn't exciting. The arm wrestle is tough and it's hard and it's in and under. And we need to give Hawthorn some credit in this respect, given the performances, the up and down performances of lots of teams. They haven't played 9 out of 10. They've played 3 7 out of 10 games, and they've proved to be hard to beat and bested their opposition without having to shoot the lights out. That's the arm wrestle. But then win the arm wrestle, then you can show glimpses of excitement as you go along. But Carlton can't do that at the moment because they're on the ropes.
Unanswerable questions. Harley Reid's in they got that wrong category this week.
Who got that wrong?
Harley Reid.
He got it wrong. Yeah, I thought Andrew McQualter got it right. That was a really strong representation of a coach presenting a balanced perspective as much as he can. Because if he's going to have hard conversations with Harley Reid, I'm not going to do it at a press conference, and I'm not going to be giving you the ammo that you're looking for to pile on. So I'm going to go and deal with the kid in private. The young man. Harley Reid isn't at one with himself at the moment, and that happens. He is agitated. He looks like he may be a little underprepared for what the game is asking on a high transition sense, but he's never going to be a high transition runner. He's not a Max Holmes who's going to run up and back all day. He's an in and under player who shows his strength, his size, his break to space. His break out of congestion, and don't argues and make something out of nothing from inside. There are just not many inside contests in the early stages of the year. There's clearance, and he sort of hasn't been as good in that part of the field or that part of the game as he normally would be, or as he showed us last year. But there's just not as many of them. Because the game, it's a run. It becomes a test of running and a running race in the early stages. And he probably had 3 or 4 interactions over the fence from what I observed in the game, and that just shows you that you're not laser vision focused and engaged in what you're doing. You're somewhat affected by the outside noise, and as Andrew said, that you need to help and coach a player through that situation. Because that would insinuate that he's not coping, and it looks like he's not he's not able to perform at his best. So that takes a little bit of time. It's not flicking a switch. That takes a little bit of time and a bit of work, and then you look after the things that you can look after, and the other things will look after themselves.
Right. The other thing we've got wrong is the ladder. Have you had a look at the ladder? What a bizarre. So Andrew Dillon was a bit dismissive of my questions on crunch time around the ladder.
When was this?
It doesn't really matter.
On the weekend?
Yep.
Okay.
It matters.
Well, it does,
it's
doesn't it?
Stupid looking ladder.
What I will say is looking at the ladder in the first 6 weeks of any season is folly. And I've always thought that as a coach. As a coach and as a team, you just do not, you don't look at the ladder. The ladder is not of relevance at all in the early stages of the season. And I'd say it's not relevant until you get to round 24. That's when it's relevant. Clearly it can inform a little bit about challenge and where you sit amongst the comp after maybe 8 rounds, 10 rounds. And then obviously you need to carry it through winter months. But it's never been relevant for me at this stage of the year, but it's a
dog's breakfast,
a caricature of itself. You've got the Gold Coast have only played the one game. They're sitting in 6th on 277%. And you've got a team, Sydney, who have played 3 games with 1 win that is down in 10th. There's a team with 1 game. There's a couple that have played 3. Most have played 2. It is all over the joint.
I think this matters more than people will concede. 80%,
and it's not going to look much different, is it? It's going to look.
It won't make any sense until we finish. It's not a great. Anyway, 80% less energy and carbon usage, battery free, always compliant, huge savings, Smart Light environmental exit signs. They got that right. Was Ross Lyon and his Saints, which is a game you did Saturday night.
Yeah, I dug deep in this the half hour before I came in. I did the game on Fox, but I was absolutely enamoured with what with the way the game was played, the first half in particular, like a St Kilda side that have 5 players 11 games or less. Hall's playing his second game, O'Connell his second game, Keeler his first, Collard his 4th, and Garcia his 11th. So there's 5 players that have got no right to, like they're just beginning their careers. They're wide-eyed, bushy-tailed sort of, but all of them had an impact in some shape or form in and around a side that's been hobbled with injury, not expected to do anything against a team who I think are going to pose a challenge to the best teams with the way that they go about it. And they absolutely dismantled them. Pressure was at 215 across the game. I heard Chris Scott say, pressure. Oh, it's not about that. I just thought they were clean. And then when you go and look at the numbers, they only turned the ball over 7 times in their back half for the entire first half. So they only gave the ball back to Geelong in their forward half 7 times in one half of footy. That's how clean they were. And they weren't actually on their back foot that often. So they won clearance. They moved the ball effectively and quickly. They didn't go slow. They moved it quickly against a side who wants a quick game. But they just didn't miss. By hand or by foot, they didn't miss. They were in the right places at the right time, and they made all the right calls. I've got more. How long you got?
Yeah, you've still got.
Marshall, brilliant. Like that was an elite performance, and he's for me one of the most compelling ruckmen in the competition. I'm really looking forward to what he does. Windhager on Holmes is a win. Jones and Burns on the wing, so defensive wingmen against Geelong's forward wingmen. So not Hill, not Wood, not Wilson, although they were there for a bit. But it was mainly Jones and Burns because they can go and defend when Geelong's wingman went forward. Caminiti is a key back. Wanganeen Miller being a star. Sinclair doing what he does, 25 touches, 2 goals off half back because they've got the game on their terms. Oh, look, it was a coaching masterclass and an execution. Now, Geelong came back and they were really poor in the first half and they came back. But, yeah, St Kilda earned that win. They did. They made every decision right that you could. And you could see Ross's frustration when, you're just leaving the door ajar. But thankfully they did enough to hold on for them. And Geelong weren't disgraced. But, yeah, geez, how good's footy?
Might they be track specialists at Marvel?
Well, it seems that's 4 in a row against Geelong.
Yep. So the head-to-head matchup. What about more broadly across the season?
Well, if the thing is, in any environment, in any surrounding, there's learned experience and there's a gut feel and a level of comfort, or this is meant to be, or So if you've put a 4-quarter performance like that against a really good opposition with a couple of players out and other players sort of playing roles that is not as they're not as familiar with, and it's clicked and it's connected, and you've challenged, why wouldn't you just do it again against the next opposition? There will be different changes and shifts and questions that are asked, but look, they couldn't have been more impressive in the first half in particular.
I suspect across the course of the season we come at our seedings in totally different ways. I like to throw mine around every week and be hostage to the moment. I suspect you're going to have a more coherent, consistent train of thought.
Oh, I have 2 spots that have changed.
Righto, go on.
So from the bottom, Geelong have dropped a spot. I still think that that performance was, they had a lot of young players in the side as well. And to show the fight to be able to come back, 10 goals to 3 with 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. And they don't like Marvel. They're not going to play a final there, and they're not going to be there that often. So I've got them at 4.